I just want to try and understand civil and criminal law, because it seems to me that the New Zealand Police and the Crown Office and the Ombudsman and the Cabinet Ministers, all those people in power, they use civil and criminal law while they're instigating threats, intimidation, harassment, stalking, slandering, labelling, defaming. Inventing brain injuries, inventing mental illnesses, having victims' lives violated and raped, and all their negative, malicious, criminal, abusive, violent impacts that they're having on the victims' lives. And I'm trying to... They have you under a civil jurisdiction. They have reviews and appeals that are the biggest load of shite. They're as corrupt as the day is long. The lawyers are corrupt. The judges are corrupt. They've got no understanding of the difference between hearsay and lies, innuendo, speculation, manufacturing, and facts and evidence. Because they use a lot of malicious, criminal, abusive, violent behaviours. They use a lot of fictitious written reports. They use a lot of hearsay, speculation, innuendo. And they seem to lose the evidence and the facts and the truth, because their entire legal system is as corrupt as the day is long. They make up their own rules as they go along. But a civil matter is when there's only money involved, or there's only an issue involved. When people declare an act of war against you, how can you deem that a civil action? And there's more than enough evidence. I've even got it on tape by Kerry Kay, who's a senior police constable who's now left the force after doing an investigation that he didn't do. He literally wrote up a report to not have to do an investigation, and then all of a sudden he retires. How convenient on this case, but that's the kind of corruption you're up against. And the senior police officials refusing me meetings and everything else. Sending police to my home after the Ashburton tragedy of a couple of people getting killed and one people getting seriously injured. You don't hear too much about that. You see the government going out there and spending 20-30 million on security, and that'll continue for many years to come. So literally then you're going out then to serve everybody trespass notices. You can't raise your voice, you can't show any human reactions whatsoever. You have to stay completely calm and listen to the shite that people are giving you, and the abuse and the patronizing, condescending behavior that they are trained to behave in. Because the intent is to entrap you into a crime, and then they've got you under the legal system, which is what New Zealand works upon. And they then deem every crime they commit as a civil action because of the civil jurisdiction, which means that none of the crimes committed by those people in positions of power, any other staff, any other management, are committing crimes according to police without doing any investigations, because that is their place of employment. But they're manipulating medical professionals. They are paying people to write up fictitious reports for a criminal purpose, and the criminal purpose is fraud. So, and then while they're doing that, they're instigating threats, intimidation, harassment, criminal harassment. They're inventing threats to kill, they're inventing brain injuries, they're inventing mental illnesses so they can violate and rape your life. And they can be negative towards you, and they're putting security guards outside medical appointments. It's all part and parcel of their intimidation and their criminal provocation. And at which point does civil and criminal cross? Because they want to take their crimes and turn them into a civil matter while committing their crimes. My case at the moment is stagnant. stalemate, Mexican standoff. It is isolated. It is alienated. It is extremism. It is dictatorship. And the organisation's now trying to pass it to the GP, and the GP's trying to pass it to the ACC. And they're all literally throwing it between each other. And then you've got the advocate, David Hepburn, who literally doesn't answer his phone for weeks or months at a time, who literally tells you he's dealing with this, he's dealing with this, he's dealing with this, but he's actually dealing with nothing, who avoids meetings at all times, but it's okay for him to have a meeting because he's got the consent to address meetings. And he has been unsuccessful in setting up a meeting between me and ACC for now 10 years. And he's lied to me that many times about what he's dealing with and what he's waiting for and what he's working upon. So I'm literally just stagnant, stalemate, Mexican standoff because of his actions, but as well as ACC and the doctor's actions. So I've left it now to have the meeting between the GP and the advocate. Now the advocate is pissing around between me and the GP, not answering his phone, not arranging a time and date for a meeting, trying to implement medical reports that I've been arguing since day one because they're all fictitious. And that's only because the GP alleges that all the medical notes and medical files disappeared before and she didn't get them, which I find very hard to believe. It leaves a lot of questions of why has she been writing medical certificates for 8.5 years? Why has she not done any medical reports or medical investigations? Why has she not referred my case to the proper people to actually address it? Why has she never brought in a neurologist to address the nerve and pain and everything else? Because it seems to me that they've set up this so-called Auckland Regional Pain Clinic that doesn't actually give you any medications. It doesn't actually manage your case. It expects you, it would expect a brain-injured person, or it would expect a paraplegic to actually get up and walk and do it themselves. These are the type of people that would expect a dead person to manage their own case and to actually fix their own coming back to life. That is the type of belligerent, malicious, criminal, abusive, violent people you're dealing with. New Zealand is a country that avoids giving answers. It does everything through its lawyers because its lawyers are the crime. Its legal system is the crime. It takes away laws to try and free up its legal system and to free up the courts, which means literally it's committing crimes against society so that it can save money, and it's making it easier to criminally prosecute people. But they don't even have to prosecute them. All they have to do is accuse the victims of a crime, and then they get away with 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years of their criminalities. And these people do this to victim after victim after victim after victim after victim. These people are literally terrorists. And the problem is that you have no laws to protect you, and you've got no rights to protect yourself without paying millions of dollars to do it. You are, whether you like it or not, a prisoner, a hostage, a captive. You are, whether you like it or not, in the biggest fraud situation known to man, because their attitude is if you don't like it, walk away with nothing. Or being spoon-fed shit at a defrauding rate. So it's literally not running rehabilitation. It's not upholding the laws or the legislation that applies. When violence comes into a case, you can't argue the violence at a review or appeal. You can't argue the harassment, the stalking, the slandering, the labelling, the defaming. You can't question any witnesses. You are literally, you're not allowed to speak. Only the advocate can speak, and only the lawyer for the terrorist can speak. And you're not allowed to ask them questions, because they only put forward what's on the legislation. And in my case, they haven't done a very good job. The advocate, he doesn't apply for reviews and appeals anymore because he never wins them. It has to come down to making a deal to actually get some rights. And it's the organised criminal way in which this system is set up. These are crimes that these people are committing on all levels of ACC Crown and government to protect this multi-billion-dollar fraud-run industry. And they're only lining the pockets of their own professions. And their victims are literally having their lives turned into prisoners, hostages, and captives. They're destroying people's health and well-being. They are behaving more like drug dealers than medical professionals. They are proven habitual compulsive liars. And they are state criminal kidnappers. And this is what they use the legal system for. Now, like it or not, people, this is a terrorist network. And it's no different to a militia or gangsters literally controlling people's lives and deciding people's fate. You know, you've got all the violence, you've got all the abuse, you've got all the threats, you've got all the intimidation, you've got all the criminal control. And the only purpose for that control is so they can make money. And if they fuck up and the injuries that they're supposed to be treating, which they have, because they sent my life on a different path, and once they send your life on that different path, then it's about, the victim then has to fight to get back to the point of their injuries. This is 18 years, people. These are the crimes of people with knowledge of the law and using the law to commit their crimes, and then trying to turn their crimes from criminal into civil, and then argue the point over the legislation and the law, and then argue the point over criminality. So they're separating their crimes from their civil jurisdiction. So they get to commit all their crimes, they get to walk free, the victim gets to remain prisoner, hostage, and captive, and held criminally to blackmail and ransom, Mexican standoff, and in a fraudulent situation that is controlled by the terrorists running the government. Now, you all might say, oh, you're a bit far-fetched. I'm not far-fetched at all. Not one bit. I can ask 1,000,001 questions, but you don't single out people, isolate them, alienate them, and then claim you're running rehabilitation. You do not starve people of all their rights, entitlements, rehabilitation, medical and treatment needs, and then claim you're running rehabilitation. You do not manipulate medical professionals to write up reports that suit your purpose in violating and raping a victim's life that has nothing to do with the injuries that they actually suffer from. There is no civil action when a person's writing up a medical certificate with chronic pain on it at the behest of the criminals involved and ignoring the fact of neurological nerve damage, and then causing the victim to suffer post-traumatic stress through all your violence and all your kidnapping and everything else, and then telling the victim to go resolve it themselves. No. This country is built on the fundamentals of organized crime, and their crimes are not civil, and their holding their victims criminally to blackmail and ransom is not acceptable. These people are terrorists, destroying people's lives, and they're kidnapping people through their legislation so they can commit fraud. And that's the whole problem I have, and the United Nations should have been dealing with this. They've got a lawyer called Foster. Now, Foster took up a case for me in connection with an appeal over me signing my medical certificate that they claimed I signed dishonestly. What bullshit. And then they denied me an appeal. Now, Foster goes before the UN quite often, but he never goes and tells the truth to the UN. He never addresses the criminalities of these people. He's too busy trying to address the legislation that's all flawed, and it's been manipulated, and it's been twisted and turned, and he's demented in the way that he's doing things. But I think he's been driven on that path by the people involved, and he's just trying to make it look good so he can make money. Because from what I've seen up to now, he hasn't helped one victim. And he lost the easiest case in the world, in mine, before the Supreme Court, and before the High Court. And you can't appeal to any other court. So literally, they have worked to have me labelled for the rest of my life, even though that I don't have to declare that after 7 years, which has now gone away. But it's not the point. The point is it's the principle of the matter, and they would not let me clear my name because they didn't want any criminal accountability for the crimes they committed against me. So now I am literally their prisoner, their hostage, and their captive. And they're defrauding me of my entire life, quality of life. They are a danger to my life, and they are a danger to my health and well-being. None of them can be trusted. And the problem, it's a very small thing to address. But everybody wants to try and turn it into this, they're trying to make you look to the society like you're a murderer or something. You've done nothing wrong. The people running it need to be lynched themselves because they are a lynch mob. They are vigilantes. They are sadists on a grand scale. And to them it's all about money. To me it's all about restoring my life to the best it can be. And it's never going to be returned to the best it can be unless it's out of the hands of the terrorists running it. But they're not willing to pay for the bills for me to go overseas. But they told me to go overseas and get free medical treatment. But they're not willing to pay if it's not free. So in other words, they're literally turning my life into their prisoner. They're hostage and they're captive. And they're not funding what needs to be funded for me to get the help that I need. And then they're covering up the post-traumatic stress and the trauma that they've caused me through their own violence. They're trying to put that down to my accident while they've destroyed my life for 18 years and defrauded me for 18 years and held me criminally to blackmail and ransom for 18 years. And this is a continuation of their criminalities. And then they try to get rid of me for free with all their malicious criminal prosecutions. And that failed. So now they've gone to the next extreme: silence, isolation, alienation, singled out. And now they're trying to say that, well, we can only give you what the legislation allows. The legislation is a crime against humanity. It really is. Because nobody upholds what they're supposed to do. Doctors haven't even got a clue what the legislation is, so they don't even know what the victim's entitled to and what the victim's not entitled to. They fill out the medical certificates that ACC fill out for them. Now, I get all the post-traumatic stress and everything put on medical certificates, and then the next time the medical certificate is to be renewed, all the stuff that was written on by the GP has been taken off by ACC themselves. This is a criminal offence, to remove information and evidence from a medical certificate, and to not adhere to the information on the medical certificate. So what we have is, we've got the agreement of 2006. That was meant to get me the best medical treatment money can buy and set me up in my own self-employed business and allow me to get on with my life. That turned into having me falsely imprisoned, having my sanity questioned because they wouldn't videotape in the prison, so they decided they were going to put me in a fucking mental asylum so they didn't have to tape record fucko. And believe you me, it was not a nice fucking place to be. And that is how this vigilante lynch mob gang of vigilantes and state terrorists work. That's how these sadists work. And all you do, you have to put up with condescending, patronizing, oh, that's great, you know what I mean? It's like, fuck, it does my head in. Even to this day, it still goes through my head. So, in other words, to win over a case and to destroy a victim's life, so these people in positions of power can save their careers and their reputations and everything else, and the media helps them cover it up. This is what they do to their victims. The problem here is simply the government refusing me lawful forums and lawful funding for public-private criminal prosecutions because they won't give me any inquiries. They won't hold anybody to account. They won't address anything that needs to be addressed. They are literally carrying out the biggest crime of the century, and then they're trying to call it a civil matter when it's a crime, because they're destroying my life and they're destroying my health and well-being, and they're defrauding me in the process. Their intent is to wear me down mentally, psychologically, emotionally, physically, and financially. And you know, nobody's doing anything about it. The police won't investigate it. The Crown Law Office is standing in the way because it's run by a bunch of terrorists. The Ombudsman's Office is shut up shop because they were involved in the secret meeting in Parliament, which they shouldn't have been. They're supposed to be impartial. And it goes to show exactly the true extent of how these terrorists work. So the chief ombudsman involved, Beverly Wickham, she got a knighthood and then she retired. Mike Heron became, like, he's the one who threatened me in a court of law and said, you better watch your back, sunshine. He gets promoted to Solicitor General. Gerard McGreevy, the biggest criminal of them all, he gets to destroy all the evidence and all the information and then walks out of ACC and gets employed in the Ministry of Justice at the very top level. God, it's never ending. Coratia Seymour, with none of his qualifications, the guy who instigated the threat to kill that led to having me falsely imprisoned and everything else, he simply committed perjury in a court of law and got to walk free. And the evidence proved he committed perjury in a court of law. And proved that he lied about the information that he was talking about. And yeah, it's never ending. It's like it's been turned into this. It's the biggest crime that anybody can commit against the victim, trying to use a civil jurisdiction while committing crimes against the victim, while not adhering to your own laws and legislation, while you're defrauding your victim at the same time. So I hope you understand where I'm coming from. New Zealand is a country run by organised criminals, vigilantes and state terrorists.